Hey everyone, how are you doing? So, I have another book to discuss, and I love this book. Okay, this is going to be, you know, I would read this again. It is Pachinko by Min Jin Lee. I first heard about this book through the Book of the Month Club. It was the February selection for me, and it is on the longer side. It's almost 500 pages, which I'm cool with. I like a longer novel. It is one of those generational tales that spans almost 80 years. A family living in Japan. They're Korean by nationality and ethnicity, but early on in the 1910s, early 1920s, they are transplanted to Japan. And it follows the family's life living in a country where they're second class citizens, but if they were to return to Korea, again, they would be second class citizens because they would be considered more Japanese. So, this book, there's a special place in my heart for Korea because in the army I served 18 months over there. And I love the country. Beautiful country, wonderful people. I thoroughly enjoyed my time there, and someday I will go back to visit. So reading anything about Korea, I thoroughly enjoy it. But this book, I haven't been to Japan. My knowledge of the Korean Japanese relationship is very rudimentary. And this book helped put an extra light on it to kind of help me understand what exactly is going on. And I think the best way to explain it to a Westerner would be think of the relationship between England and Ireland. How England, was previously an oppressor to Ireland, and some would argue still is, and the whole North Ireland situation. And for many people, there's still a lot of friction about, as recently as my parents or my grandparents, what that oppression meant. But this book specifically deals with ethnic Koreans living in Japan. It starts out in the early 1910s with a family living on Yeongdo, off the coast, off from Busan. And, the young daughter, only daughter of this older couple, kind of gets taken in by an older man, has sex with him, gets pregnant, and at that time is like, she's screwed in more ways than one. And one of the tenants passing through was a minister, a Protestant missionary, and he really felt for the girl and knew what kind of predicament she was in and went to marry her. And the story goes from there. They move to Japan so he can take a job with the church. They have that child. They have, another child of their own, and they're building up, and it goes through the generations what happens. I think my favorite character in this book was probably Sunja, which is the young woman who gets pregnant by the older man. She puts up with so much stuff, and she goes through so much stuff. Coming to a country that she doesn't know the language, and even at the end, she's still really struggling with the language. She's constantly like, throughout her entire life, the guy who got her pregnant is very well connected, and later on in the book you find out that he's Yakuza, or Japanese mobster, and he just keeps, zapping in her life at like all the right and wrong times. And it really, really complicates things, and it really makes her life hard. It enriches her life in some ways, but it really makes her life hard in others. You see how relationships change over time, and how expectations change over time, and how in a lot of ways expectations stay the same. You see in a couple places, Japanese employers wouldn't hire Koreans, or they would hire Koreans for secondary gain and underhanded reasons. You see how sexual relationships change, and you do have one homosexual character in there who really she really addresses him coming into his own in the 70s. You have a character who succumbs to HIV/AIDS. So you see how a lot of things change. You see how the culture changes and doesn't change, and how some changes are quick and some are slow, and the way that families break apart and come together. And it's just fascinating, and I love this woman's writing style. I absolutely adore it. I discussed it a little bit with Arrowwood, where you don't really reach a part of the book where you're like, oh my god, I don't want to read about this. You have that every piece is critical, every piece has a place, every character has a role, and it really it is plausible, and you see the character development. I said in the last video I don't really care about character development, but I feel in this book it really did. It drove it home, and it added to the entire atmosphere. Like I said, I lived there for 18 months. I lived in Korea for 18 months. But being in Asia, I felt transported back there. So her descriptions and the way she phrased things, I could see it so clearly in my mind, as if I were walking up the steps of the subway, at Sabingo Station. I could see it so clearly. I highly recommend this book. I have said I lived in Asia. I don't think, if you have no exposure to Asia, if you've never lived there, if you have no Asian friends, I don't think that would be a major impediment to you enjoying this book. If you're interested at all in traveling in other cultures, in history, this is a good book for you. Okay? If you're interested in international relations, this is the book for you. Even if you're interested in like family dynamics, it's a good book for you. I can't recommend this book enough. I love this book. Pachinko by Min Jin Lee. If you've read it, hit me up in the comments. Tell me what you thought. If you have any similar suggestions, other suggestions, you think I'm completely off track and, I was blinded by the light of this book and totally misjudging it, write it in the comments. Let me know. And if you have any book recommendations, let me know down below too. Until next time, readers.